And the abuser, they see that and think, mission accomplished, because now they have even more control. And that's what this was about in the first place. That's how isolation grows, not because someone's forcing you, but because the abuse itself is going to create a natural distance between you and your support system. So they don't have to isolate you if the fear and shame do the work for them. Now, let's flip the script for a second. Welcome back to the Brave Method, where we talk all things relationships, healing, and self-love. So today we're unpacking one of the most damaging and honestly sneaky tactics in abusive relationships, and that is isolation. Isolation is when you're cut off from your family and friends and support systems that could help you, whether it happens intentionally or as a byproduct of the abuse. We're going to talk about the truth behind isolation, why it happens, and most importantly, how you can break free and start reconnecting with yourself and others. Before we get started, if you haven't read what I talk about here yet, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about it today. So my goal here is to teach and inform my community about domestic violence, healing from trauma, healthy relationships, and everything in between. And some topics are going to be more serious than others, but what I don't want is for this to feel like a lecture hall. I want these episodes to feel more like a conversation, something you could connect with and learn from and take something valuable away from. I want it to feel more engaging for you all, and I'm working out the kinks with myself to ensure that that is what comes of this. And I honestly was planning to hold off on a topic this heavy, but I've been inspired to record this episode now because, without getting too personal, I'll just say someone I know, she's been in a toxic relationship with her partner for a few years, and she's in a place where she's still protecting him, even though he's abusive to her. And that's not uncommon. So I thought it was important to record this episode sooner rather than later. And I think it's important that we talk about it now. Whether you are in an abusive relationship or you know someone else who may be, I think it's important to be able to identify what isolation is. Abuse comes in many forms, so I'm not going to specify the kind of abuse I know she's enduring, but I would just say it's reached a point to where she's isolated from her loved ones. And that's what pushed me to talk about this today. Because isolation in abusive relationships is real. And it's one of the hardest parts to recognize and break free from. So let's get into it. There's this myth that abusers isolate you on purpose. Like it's always some deliberate plan to cut you off from your friends, family, and anyone else who loves you. Now, sometimes they do, but often it's not that direct. And most of the time, isolation happens without anyone explicitly saying, don't talk to them. I've literally had conversations with women who told me I didn't even realize I stopped reaching out to my mom or best friend until it had been months. And this makes you wonder how, why. But think about it. When someone is constantly mistreating you, it makes you afraid to open up. You don't want to reach out to anybody because you might feel embarrassed or ashamed. You start pulling back on your own, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. Abuse doesn't just hurt you physically or emotionally. It makes you question your worth and your reality. And when you do connect with loved ones, you might find yourself putting on this fake smile or pretending like everything's okay. You don't tell them what's really going on because maybe you think they won't understand or they'll judge me. And over time, that's going to create this natural distance, like real distance between you and the people who care about you. And the abuser, they see that and think, mission accomplished. Because now they have even more control. And that's what this was about in the first place. That's how isolation grows. Not because someone's forcing you, but because the abuse itself is going to create a natural distance between you and your support system. So they don't have to isolate you if the fear and shame do the work for them. Now, let's flip the script for a second. Because while isolation isn't always intentional, there are definitely situations where it is. And when it's done on purpose, it's not just random, it's definitely calculated. Abusers know that the less connected you are to the people who love and support you, the easier it is for them to maintain the control that they desire to have over you. When isolation is intentional, this might look like them constantly stirring up drama with your family or friends, picking fights and saying things like they don't really care about you, or convincing you that your loved ones are somehow against you or your relationship. And it's all part of creating this us versus them dynamic where they become the only person you feel like you can rely on. Sometimes it's more direct, like flat out forbidding you to see certain people or go certain places. They might control who you talk to, how you spend your time, or even your finances, so you're less independent and more dependent on them. And let's not talk about social media, because they'll check your posts, they're checking your messages, your DMs, your inboxes, they're combing through your comments like you're being watched 24/7. And it's all designed to isolate you emotionally, physically, and digitally. So you feel like there's no one left but them. So whether it happens as a byproduct of the abuse or part of a calculated plan, isolation is still powerful. So how do we fight back against this isolation? How do we rebuild those connections when it feels like a bridge has been burned? Well, the first thing that you need to do is acknowledge that it's happening. And also realize that it's not your fault, whether it's intentional or not. The goal of abuse is to silence you. So just acknowledging it, by naming it, you take the first step towards breaking that silence. And then the next thing you'll want to do is start reconnecting. It starts small though. Reconnecting can feel overwhelming. Yes, absolutely. Especially when you've been out of touch with certain people for so long. But start with one safe person. Maybe it's that friend who always said, I'm here for you no matter what. Or a family member who's just been quietly waiting for you to open up. But just reach out, even if it's a simple text like, hey, I miss you. You don't have to dive into everything right away. The goal is to rebuild, not overwhelm yourself. However, during this process, you must be honest, but only as much as you're ready for. You don't owe anyone your full story, especially if you're not ready to share it. Maybe you can start with something like, I've been going through a lot and it's been hard for me to reach out, but I really want to reconnect. The right people will understand that, and they'll meet you where you are without judgment. And that's how you know that they are safe. And another important step you'll want to take is to start rebuilding trust with yourself. When you've been isolated, it's not just your connections with others that take a hit. It's your connection with yourself also. Abuse and isolation can make you lose sight of who you are and what you need. So one of the most powerful things you can do is start rediscovering that. And this might look like asking yourself simple but important questions. Like, what do I enjoy? Or what makes me feel good? What makes me feel safe? Even small things like spending 10 minutes doing something that you love, whether it's listening to music or going for a walk or writing in a journal. Writing in a journal could be good because your thoughts can remind you who you are outside of your relationship. And it's slowly rebuilding your sense of self and giving yourself space to reconnect with what makes you you. Now, if reconnecting with other people feels too hard on your own, that's okay. And I know reaching out for professional help can seem intimidating, but it can also be a game changer. I have a therapist that I talk to on a regular, and I think everyone else should have a therapist to talk to on a regular, especially if you're going through something like this. So therapists, counselors, and domestic violence advocates are trained to help you navigate these situations in ways that family and friends might not fully understand. You may really just be in a place where you feel like there's no way out, or like no one could possibly understand what you're going through. And sometimes friends and family mean well, but they don't fully understand what you're going through, especially something of this magnitude. And that's where professionals come in at. So it's definitely okay to seek professional help, and they can help you process the trauma and rebuild your confidence and create a plan for next steps, whether that means leaving a relationship or just finding ways to feel safe where you are now. And if therapy feels out of reach, there are so many organizations that offer free or low cost support. Domestic violence centers have counselors, they have legal resources and housing resources to help you navigate this without feeling like you are just going through this alone. They normally have support groups where you can share your experiences with people who truly get it, because they may be in the same or similar situations. The point is, you don't have to figure it out on your own. Sometimes just having someone outside of the situation who gets it can lift 1,000 pounds off of your shoulders. Now, if the isolation you're experiencing feels intentional, like your partner is really going out of their way to keep you cut off, then reconnecting with others might need to happen a little more carefully. Now, this isn't about just reaching out to old friends. This turns into making sure you're safe when you do reach out, right? When someone isolates you on purpose, it's often paired with other controlling behaviors. So maybe they check your phone, maybe they track where you go, or even threaten you when they think you're stepping out of line. If that's the case, here's how you can start reconnecting without putting yourself at risk. Now, first, think about whether your partner is monitoring you. Are they checking your texts? Are they logging into your social media or asking constant questions about where you are and who you're with? If the answer is yes, then reaching out might need to happen on a safer device, like maybe a friend's phone if there's any friends still around, or in a way that they won't notice. You want to talk to people who get it. And here's the thing. Not everyone is going to understand what you're going through, and that's okay. This is why reaching out to professionals like domestic violence advocates can be a game changer, because they know how to handle these situations and can help you figure out what next steps to take, whether that's reconnecting with family or planning your exit. Now, what you don't want to do is confront them about isolation. If you're still living with your partner, confronting them about this could escalate things. So instead, just focus on building your network quietly. It's about creating a foundation for yourself while staying as safe as possible. However, the next thing you do want to do is think about your next move. If things are really bad, it might be time to start planning for what's next. And listen, this doesn't mean that you have to leave tomorrow or next week, but having a plan in place, whether it's packing a bag, saving some money, or reaching out to a shelter, whatever it is, can give you a sense of having some type of control in the situation. I know this can feel overwhelming, but just remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Just take it one step at a time and lean on people who truly want to help you. Because it truly doesn't matter how long you've been in your situation or how long you've been isolated from certain people. You don't have to stay in this situation forever. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, breaking out of isolation starts with one small brave step. Whether that's reaching out to someone you trust or just reminding yourself that you don't have to go through it alone. And if this resonates with you, or if it taught you anything about isolation that you didn't already know, talk to me in the comments. And if you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, I'm going to leave resources such as the domestic violence hotline number below so that you can reach out and seek professional help if that's what you need at this time. Until next time on The Brave Method, love yourself first and everything else will follow.